I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Dan Zavorotny.
You know, if you think about it in some ways, you have a walk-in billboard, walk-in, living, talking billboard. I mean, if you think about it, like, look at other brands, Nike or, Polo, they sell t-shirts many times, but they have the little logo there, and the logo becomes recognizable. In so many ways, we're doing a similar thing. We're getting people in the wild, and they're able to demonstrate a product. And when people ask the question like, what is that? Or how does it work? Immediately becomes a conversation starter.
Dan Zavorotny is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Nutrisense, a metabolic health company that helps anyone discover and reach their health potential. Under Dan's leadership, Nutrisense has become one of the fastest growing startups in America. He has led the company through rapid growth, building a team of 170 employees in just over 3 years and raising $32 million. Prior to co-founding Nutrisense, Dan worked as a healthcare management consultant at KPMG, where he advised Fortune 500 companies and 3 of the top 5 hospitals in the U.S. My interview with Dan Zavorotny is coming right up. But first, support for On Brand and all shows on the Marketing Podcast Network is provided by Active Campaign. If you're looking for a way to grow your business, you need to check out Active Campaign. It is a powerful marketing automation platform that can help you increase your sales, improve your customer service, and build stronger relationships with your customers. With Active Campaign, you can create and send email campaigns, manage your leads and customers, create landing pages, set up automated workflows, and track your results, all in one approachable platform. Active Campaign has over 10,000 5-star reviews on G2 from happy customers. Preview Me is one. They're a B2B software company that uses Active Campaign to send their prospective customers highly visual and personalized emails as they progress through CRM stages, such as completing a demo. This has increased their click-through rate 96%. If you are serious about growing your business, you need to check out Active Campaign. Try it today for free and see how it can help you achieve your goals. For a limited time, Active Campaign is offering listeners of the On Brand podcast a chance to double your contacts for free when you sign up at activecampaign.com/activate. That means if your email list has 10,000 contacts, you only need to pay for 5,000. Or you can pay for the 10,000 and get an extra 10,000 totally free. Personalize your customer experience, but do it with automation, just like 185,000 businesses have at Active Campaign. Go to activecampaign.com/activate to sign up today. That's activecampaign.com/activate. Terms and conditions apply.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business too? Caroline Kay hosts a great podcast called Snippets of Genius. Caroline, tell us what these folks will get out of listening.
Snippets of Genius is a lighthearted business podcast with some brilliant insights into how you can attract and cultivate success. In each episode, I have an inspiring conversation with genius guests from the worlds of business development, marketing, design, and wellness. Each of them share their ballsy, daring moves to burst business opportunities wide open. Every episode is designed to give you as much value as possible so you can decide, define, and develop anything you want in your career or business.
Hard to turn that down. Where can people subscribe?
They can come on over to my website, which is www.carolinekay.co/podcast, or find the show at marketingpodcast.net, or search for Snippets of Genius wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
Dan Zavorotny, welcome to On Brand.
Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you. I am excited to chat. Now, one thing that I wanted to note, Nutrisense is a metabolic health company. But if you're in an elevator with someone and they say, okay, what's that? Well, what is your go-to answer? Because I bet there's a response that people produce, but I just,
Sure.
So what's your follow-up to that?
The follow-up is simple. If we take a look at America right now, 1/3 of us are pre-diabetic. That's 89 million people. It's a staggering number. And it has to do with us eating unhealthy food and over time just causing damage to our bodies. And what we do is we take that information and try to figure out how do we improve your health through improving your diet and personalizing it for you. And so I think a good way to look at it is that, a lot of times people say, oh, vegan's a diet you have to follow. Someone else says, no, ketogenic diet. Next day, carnivore diet. And we jump on these trends and we try to figure out what's the best diet for us. And the answer is, what the diet works for you is not a diet that works for me. And there's many reasons for this. One, it's just other attributes, our physical activity, our sleep, our stress, our work environment, our mental health. But the other pieces are also our genetics. Genetic makes a big difference. You see people from Irish descent can eat potatoes all day and have not a lot of issues. But then, someone from the Asian descent might have a big issue with a lot of potatoes. That's another part. The other, there's also factors like, it's going to sound, a little bit silly, but people say pollution. Pollution actually has a big impact on your metabolic health. Whether you're woman or man, you have to change that around and try to avert the paradigm of like we're all the same. Women and men respond very differently to the exact same foods. Microbiome, your age, all of these factors play a role. And so you'll see two guys, you might have two people look same age, same fitness level. One eats ice cream, no impact, and someone else eats ice cream, has a huge impact. And we see this inside of ourselves all the time. We see it with our customers. We see this data come up over and over and over. I mean, I think a fun fact that I always come up with show people is that fasting in the last couple of years have been getting a lot of traction. Everyone says you have to fast, intermittent fasting. That's the goal of success in life and happiness and health. We've now seen that for men, most men, intermittent fasting is extremely valuable and helpful. True. When you start looking at women, once you pass the 16-hour threshold of fasting, you actually start seeing negative effects of fasting. And the reason is that their bodies are not as designed to not eat because they're meant, naturally to reproduce. And so after 16 hours, about 50% of women actually cortisol response starts increasing and they have negative effects and they actually start gaining weight. So they have the imposing impact with what they're trying to achieve. And so really it's about how do we personalize your nutrition to you, not based on trends, but specifically on your body. And by using a platform like ours, what happens is you put this device called a continuous glucose monitor in, and you see in real time exactly how these things impact you. Whatever you eat, you find out right away. And it's an objective number of 110, 130, 140. There's no guessing. And what's fascinating is that you start developing this mind-body connection where you might have felt a little sluggish after lunch, but now you see why you felt sluggish. And you get to test things out, and people within weeks try to change their diet, and they see such improvements that it's mind-blowing, really. They no longer have this yo-yoing every single month. They know exactly what to do, and the results are astounding. People drop their A1Cs, which is usually the kind of the main biomarker people use to understand their glucose levels, just radically. So I think that's kind of what we do. I know that was more than an elevator pitch, but I just get very passionate about this topic and excited.
That is fascinating, and plus there was an aside about ice cream in there, which is especially here during the summertime when we're recording this is my go-to. And for some people, they can just eat all the ice cream in the world, but I have to be really careful about the type of ice cream and the quantity thereof. But beyond that answer, what I was thinking of too with your brand, because when it first came across my radar, and I thought, Nutrisense, I feel like I've heard of that. Googled, went to the website, and saw the picture of the person with the monitor, and instantly I knew what that was. And it reminded me of kind of an interesting kind of part of the visual brand DNA. It made me think of the kind of early visual teaching and status that went into like Apple's iPod and the white the white earbuds, and that means something because I've seen people with the little monitors on their arm, and looking at that and knowing that that is part of the brand is key. So does that factor into your thinking about building and communicating what the brand is?
It really does. It really does. I mean, I think every time someone wears that patch and they have they have our logo on top of it, people ask the question, what is that? It's unique. They don't understand. Sometimes people have our own members. They have this almost bragging right, like, look what I have on. Let me tell you about it. And they have this proud moment that they have created, and it just drives extra, what we call, brand awareness. If you think about it, in some ways, you have a walk-in billboard, walk-in, living, talking billboard everywhere. I mean, if you think about it, like, look at other brands, Nike or, Polo, they sell t-shirts many times, but they have the little logo there, and the logo becomes recognizable. In so many ways, we're doing a similar thing. We're getting people in the wild, and they're able to demonstrate a product. And when people ask the question like, what is that? Or how does it work? Immediately becomes a conversation starter, right? So we have these people who will only, like, our own customers become brand ambassadors without us asking. And so it dynamically just improves our markets and gets the conversation going. And the way we look at it too is our goal isn't to only sell product. Our goal is really improve the health of the United States. And so by people talking about, they go to the website, then they a lot of times tell people, don't purchase anything. Just read the blogs, read the research, because they start seeing the differentiation. They start understanding the data and understanding how unique they are and how they should basically not just follow, some new hip hop, new popular trend. And that really drives kind of this thinking. And that actually ends up getting people to go on this journey of their own health discovery and understanding where is the potential. They sometimes, then go talk to their doctor, start getting their labs done, annual physicals. This is the thing that we want to inspire. We want people inspired to own their health. It is your job to own your health. And we know that no matter how smart you are, how much money you make, how beautiful you are, health is the one thing that over time, unfortunately, will deteriorate. So how do you own it, right? Because we want people in their 80s and 90s to be active, not sitting in a wheelchair. And so the idea here is get people educated as much as possible. And a certain percentage of people will find value and want to go to the next level and then sign up for our services. But majority will not. However, by bringing that value, other people will say like, hey, here's the information I've discovered. Let me send more people, my friends, and tell them to read these blogs, watch these videos, and that's kind of how we've looked at brand.
I as kind of alluded to, I think visually, and when you talk about this, it's like I see you as a health brand, but it's also like a wearable lifestyle brand too. It's almost like a Venn diagram of overlapping circles. How do you think about that and approach that?
Yeah, and it's interesting. When we first started the company, we were thinking, okay, our customers and members are going to be, kind of like these biohacker 25 to 35-year-old, men living in California, San Francisco. And at first it was, but very quickly shifted to what we call Minnesota mom, right? And we started realizing
that hits close because I'm Iowa dad, but go on.
And they have different needs. And I think this is the part we started realizing that you have to constantly adjust your target market. You have these people who are these early adopters, and over time you start hitting mainstream, and then you come in and you have laggards. As I'm sure your listeners know, you have this kind of like bell curve of early people, then mid people, and then people who come in later when it hits mainstream. But as that happens, you have to understand, how do you adjust your product? How do you make it more encompassing, more welcoming? And they want different things and different features. So even our product offering has changed dramatically based on that. So we're basically, on our website, we have this quiz. You fill out a quiz, and people actually tell us who they are and what they're here for and what their background is. That's one way we identify, like, what kind of traffic are we driving? How are we changing as a company? The second part is, as we publish research, we publish articles, we publish videos, we start seeing what kind of people and like who is coming to read what content. So before it was like, how do you optimize your 1 mile sprint, to now it's, hey, how to have a relaxation time before bed. And that kind of information, both on how much time people are spending on the website and certain blogs and what they're reading, plus their demographics and psychographics, really start resonating with us and start giving our marketing team and our brand team the idea of how do we adjust our company and brand continuously. And I mean, to give you context, we've redone the website we've been around for 4 years. Every single year, we've redone a complete refresh of brand, because we've realized that you have to adjust as you grow up as a company.
On Brand, we'll be right back after this.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Kevin Hunt is one half of a great podcast called Hansen and Hunt on MPN. Kevin, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
Hansen and Hunt is a place for marketers and communicators for brands, companies, and organizations of all kinds to stay on top of industry news and trends. Eric Hansen and I discuss things that make them think, things that help them do their jobs better, things that help them hopefully show up smarter with the boss. We are a monthly show, and we've been at it since 2014.
Awesome. Where can people subscribe?
Their preferred podcast app, of course, or head to hansenandhunt.com or follow our show at marketingpodcast.net.
You heard him, folks. Go subscribe.
Now, back to the show. As you were talking about Minnesota moms and biohackers and the different audiences, you talked about serving them up a different experience and meeting those needs. Is that, at the risk of getting into the weeds, is that a different level of information that they're getting from the website to guide that experience?
It's so on the product itself. So maybe I'll start with the product offering. On the product offering itself, when somebody signs up, they'll actually tell you, their goals, their height, their weights, what are they trying to accomplish? And then based on that, we basically design an experience both from the content offering as well as we assign a health professional that's more designed for them. So if somebody's saying, I'm trying to win the Olympics, for example, as an extreme situation, we'll assign them a sports dietitian versus someone else is trying to maybe shed a couple of pounds. They'll get someone who's more on weight loss specialty. So for the user, it feels like, it's the same experience. But on the back end, that's where we do all the work. And that's where we start saying, okay, this is the kind of content we want to deliver to them. These are intervals we want to deliver to them. If somebody wants to lose 5 pounds versus someone wants to lose 100 pounds, they get a very different type of experience. And so if you just open the app, it looks the same. But in the back end, that's where a lot of machine learning is happening, a lot of automations of how do you make sure to deliver and how do we use the best behavior change technology and psychology to make sure you get that results they're looking for with a seamless experience. And so for someone else, they open it, they're like, it looks the same. How can you serve all these customers? And that's how we do it, really on the back end.
Well, I think that's fascinating too, and the talking about the different types of journeys, because sometimes, it seems like we are told to kind of pick a lane, and it sounds like there's value in both in both of those audiences, and really that you've built a brand that sort of continuously and somewhat seamlessly adapts to serve both of them while still maintaining the cohesiveness of that big goal of health ownership. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So health is, glucose specifically is the kind of the target metric that we're caring about. What we've actually done is we flipped it a little bit, and instead of saying, hey, you care about glucose, we said you are a high effort individual. Meaning, it doesn't matter if you go Olympics or huge weight loss or reversal type 2 diabetes, you have a high effort. Because a doctor can tell someone like, hey, you have type 2 diabetes, you need to improve your health. And they simply listen, goes one ear out the other. And we call those people low effort. They don't want to do much. But the moment someone wants to put a high effort, means they're willing to put in a lot of effort to improve their health, that we realize the mindset shift and like in some ways the psychology of that person, that's what makes these people all relatable. And that's what we realize, like think about it. You're putting this device, and by the way, for the audience, it penetrates the skin a little bit because we're actually tracking your blood in real time 24/7. And so not every person is willing to do that. And so for you to make that kind of mental commitment, you are in this category high effort. And so now we can actually know that how to work with you. And we know you're going to commit to X amount of time period, and you choose the time period you want to commit to, 3, 6, 12 months. We know that, hey, we're going to try to get you to the next level in that time frame. And inside the software, it's really become modular, right? So if you're like a biohacker still, we then know the dietitian is going to be assigned to is going to be really about optimizing, and she's going to add extra charts for you, extra information, all the she gets very sciencey. She'll say, here's, in-depth research papers, versus if you're someone, who's a accounting manager at let's say at Wells Fargo, you probably don't want all the information. You probably want to be more spoon-fed to you, just told what to do, and you slowly in small micro steps improve. You don't need to read, the latest research. You trust the dietitian working with you. And so by having this more modular, the base ends up being the same thing. It's more about how you feed the information, how do you provide the content to the member.
I also want to talk about something that you've alluded to here too, with all of the, with the biohacker personality. There's a lot of health focused wearables, to the point
Yep.
that even as an emerging industry, it's a very noisy space. So a person that, a biohacker is probably gonna have it all, but to
Yep.
someone that is a Minnesota mom or an Iowa dad, and they've got, okay, I'm monitoring my steps with a Fitbit or some sort of pedometer. I've got an Apple Watch. What is the angle on why I should be looking at glucose also?
Yeah, I think the reason why it matters is this. If you look at something like a Fitbit and monitors your steps, you walk 10,000 steps. But should you have walked 12,000 steps, or should you walk 6,000 steps? Where's this 10,000 step number coming from? And I believe it came from Japan, and it's some research they did that the average person needs 10,000 steps. But it's not personalized. And in an ideal case scenario, truly, we'd love to measure everything, all your hormones, your insulin, your testosterone, your estrogen. Unfortunately, science is not there. And glucose is really a proxy for all these things, right? And so what happens is this. When you lose weight because you start working out, you may think you're doing better, but you might have lost muscle mass, and you don't know. So it's actually bad weight loss. You also can start working out and actually gain weight. But again, now it's muscle mass. It's good. And so that's the problem. A lot of times you don't have this proxy. You don't have the definition of what's actually happening inside. With glucose, you start seeing this personalization. And guess what? All of us eat, right? All of us get stressed out. And so by having this variable that it gives you the exact insight, it is a data point that it's simply, you can't escape from. You need this data point once you understand it. And I'll give you some maybe outside of food stories that are a little bit interesting here. We had one individual, perfect diet, perfect sleep, perfect workout regime. But for some reason at 4 p.m. every single day, their glucose is going out to diabetic type 2 range for 2 hours. And we message them hey, what's happening this time? And we realized that every day at 4 p.m., they were having a meeting with their boss, their one daily catch-up. And what's happening, they were getting so stressed from that meeting, the cortisol level was rising, and then that was in turn pushing their glucose up. So they're actually causing themselves to be metabolically unhealthy over time because they were so stressed out. And, a lot of times what happens, we live with this continuous stress that becomes part of our life. And we simply don't realize that you could feel better because it's chronic stress. And once you help people understand this, they have this mind-body connection. They start, it's going to sound silly almost, but a lot of these things like meditation, yoga, start becoming more effective. Because sometimes you do your breathing exercise and you think, what am I doing? It's a waste of time. But then you do this breathing exercise and you see your improvement in glucose immediately because your cortisol response were improved, and you're saying, wow, I see it, I visualize it, I feel it. Now I have this mind-body connection. And you just can't replace that, right? Because, I mean, you know, like people tell you McDonald's is bad for you. And you're like, it's not a big deal because you don't see the results for 30 years, right? And you want the instant gratification versus delayed gratification. Here you eat it and you see a glucose spike, to like 300 when healthy ranges of 140, and you're like, oh my God. Now the consequences become immediate, not 30 years later when you have heart disease or diabetes, right? And so when you have this immediate behavior change, all these habits you've been trying to get rid of for decades, but you can't, all of a sudden you get rid of them pretty quickly. And we've seen people, it's like mind blowing how people have been trying to get rid of certain habits for 2 decades, and then within a week they drop the habit. It's because you have this number in your face on your phone, objective, telling you how bad it truly is for you. And then the irony is that something people have been telling you they're bad is actually not that bad. And you start saying, I could do this thing. It's completely fine.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it interesting. There's no he said, she said, right? I mean, I think, you go to the doctor a lot of times and you ask the doctor, like, hey, what should I be doing? The doctor says, oh, you need to exercise and eat better. What does that mean? What does exercise and eat better mean? And it's really what it means for you specifically. And then the irony also is that doctor a lot of times is overweight, which is absolutely ironic. People forget very often that most doctors do not get nutritional training. Last time I read, only 18% of doctors in America had one class of nutrition. The rest had 0 class of nutrition. And yet nutrition is one of the main facets of our health. Well,
Right.
Garbage in, garbage out, right? So, and that's the part that I think is very critical people to understand.
Well, your story about, it makes me think of the tried and true, I think, Peter Drucker quote about you can't manage what you don't measure, and that we think of that
Exactly.
in the business context, but it definitely applies to health. And talking about monitoring it and it going up when the boss is around, it's always going to make me think of Stanley in The Office after he has his heart attack and he's got the little monitor, and then they figure out when Michael's walking over to him that it's going off because he's causing
exactly.
stress.
Exactly. And this is where, I wish we were not living this kind of world, but I think unfortunately we as Americans are incredible marketers, probably the best marketers in the world. However, sometimes we market really terrible quality food. I think we've seen before where people would say like, low fat. That was a craze everywhere, and all the food's low fat, but they load up with sugar. Now the craze is no sugar, but they load up with fat. And then you see this continuous moving things around. There's whatever the new trend is. And people, like if someone is a marketing manager or a county manager, they might be a police officer, like they might be a, lawyer. They don't have time to read and understand all this stuff. And the labels are always changing. And so we get caught up in this dynamic of just constantly being over marketed and we don't know what to do. But when you have something like this, you start truly understanding, and it's no longer guidance from it's guidance from your own body. Like you can't dispute this.
Well, Dan, this conversation has made me smile in lots of different ways. And now it is time for me to ask you for a brand that has made you smile recently.
Yeah, there's a company called iFood, and it's a Brazilian company. It's called, actually in Brazilian, called iFuji, right? They pronounce their words a little differently here. But it's similar to, like, it's a combination of like Uber and 5 other companies. They basically deliver anything to your house you want, literally anything. Whether you want them to deliver medicine from a pharmacy, from a restaurant, deliver some from your friend's house, anything you can even think about. The convenience they provide is mind-blowing. And, we oftentimes Americans forget there's companies outside of the US that also do valuable work. And I think this company's really dramatically helped me, especially when I was traveling abroad, because it made me less restrictive. As you go to a new country, you don't speak the language. A lot of times it's very difficult to, order something, or there's a problem. How do you solve it? Here, all of a sudden you go in the app and you just order anything you want anytime. So I think this is a company that made me smile a lot because they provide a lot of help in my life to me.
Awesome. And I love learning about new brands with that question too. Dan, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. They can add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help any other founders or people trying to build companies. Dan Zavorotny had me on LinkedIn. I always tell people, please ask me questions with things that you want help with. They're very specific. Because I've had people reach out and say, what is brand? And those things you can Google and YouTube and listen to podcasts versus, hey, here's a specific thing I'm considering, and there's option A and B. Which one do you think and why? That to me is interesting. I want to help solve those kind of problems. But things you can Google or YouTube, guys, like I always tell people, don't be lazy, right? Because we're all busy. But when you have complicated questions, please reach out. I want to help you. You can also check out Nutrisense.io. We finally own Nutrisense.com. When we first started, we had no money. So I understand the journey everyone goes through. So we bought Nutrisense.io for $7. I think 2 years later, we finally could afford Nutrisense.com and we paid like $30,000, $40,000 for it. But, as you scale up, you finally get there. But, branding takes forever. It takes forever, and it's an ongoing journey, never stops. So, if you guys ever want any health information, go to our website, nutrisense.io or .com. Don't buy anything. Just sign up for a newsletter, learn about your health, learn about things you may not know about, get better, take control of your health, do an annual physical, and hopefully your health will maintain and you can play with your children, grandchildren, hopefully great-grandchildren afterwards into your late 80s and 90s.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can always find at onbrandpodcast.com. Dan, thanks for being on brand with us.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.